There are many purple passages in Waltharius, famous moments that have elicited much commentary. I'd just like to know, what's your favorite passage in the poem?
Well, Waltharius has killed three men who've come at him one at a time, and now he faces Ecgfrid, a warrior from the Saxon shore, and he comes forward um, and says something rude to him, and Waltharius replies. Waltari laughed aloud and then made this reply. Your Celtic tongue proves that you come from that race put on this earth to serve as jesters to the rest. And you've written a note about this saying, he's not a Celt, actually, he's a Saxon. So what is the point here? Um, but I take it that a Saxon could in fact be a Briton, and a Briton could also be a Celt. So we're not really sure about the what do you call them, the ethnic group that Ecgfrid comes from. But I just thought it was quite funny, actually, that they start throwing ethnic slurs at each other.
Yeah, actually, the phrase Celtica lingua is one of these major cruces of Voltarius scholarship. There's a good number of articles devoted specifically to trying to determine what that phrase means. And there's different theories. One is that it's a reference to Ecgfrith being an Anglo-Saxon. Another is precisely that he's a Briton who speaks Old English and has an Old English name. And then there's another one, which is that it's just a kind of derogatory term for speaking
Mm.
nonsense. Okay, Tom, let's talk now about another interesting feature of Valtarius, which is that it features the character of Attila the Hun,
Mm.
and it features him in a somewhat ridiculous light. What do you have to say about that figure of Attila in Voltarius and in other medieval Germanic works?
Yes. Well, there was clearly a kind of deep split with reference to him, and this actually it certainly was pointed out by Tolkien. There was a time when his son Christopher gave a paper at a meeting, which is very much about this, and Tolkien said in his letter to his son, it was all very good, but what really hit me was the bit when you talked about Attila, and we realized that Attila is not a Hunnish word at all. It's Gothic. And Illa is diminutive, and Atta means daddy. So Attila was little father to a large number of Germanic speakers who must have been, what should we say, on his side. He was also obviously the deadly enemy of Germanic speakers, perhaps the same Germanic speakers, but just the same, there are the two opinions of him fossilized, so to speak, in the tradition. There's the good Attila and the bad Attila, and we, of course, only remember the bad Attila. But actually, he's treated with considerable respect and even friendship. No, I think that's too much respect and a kind of familiarity in some of our materials, and that perhaps is a relic of the Gothic opinion. As I say, it's strange, very strange, that he has a Gothic name.
So, in addition to Attila the Hun, there is a character in Voltarius named Ospirin or Ospirina, who is the queen of the Huns. And she has an interesting moment where she advises Attila on how to keep Walter at the court by offering him a Hunnish bride. What do you make of the figure of Ospirin?
Well, I do notice that you had to alter her name slightly to prevent too much similarity to a familiar medication that we all take. So that was perhaps unfortunate. But there seems to have been a kind of interest in Attila's wives. We know the name of one of them, Germanic name, Hildiko, and it is thought that he died in suspicious circumstances after marrying her. And it said that he died of a nosebleed, having celebrated too much. But there are people, it, there are no doubt people at the time who thought, yeah, he got killed. He just married one of those Germans, hadn't he? Maybe she had something to do with it. So the question of Attila's wives was a serious one for some people. Well, Ospirina doesn't seem to be dangerous in any way, but she is actually a good advice giver. So I think she's been invented in a way to be the good wife as opposed to the bad wife image, which was also circulating.
All right. So we've talked about the character of Attila, and we've talked about his wife, the Queen Ospirina. Let's talk now about the hero of the poem itself, Walter of Aquitaine. What do you think of this character?
Well, the thing that's puzzling in a way is uh, quite where he comes from. In the Nibelungenlied, for instance, he's Der von Spanien Walter, Walter from Spain. Well, Aquitaine's in France, but it's going down to the Spanish border. So you wonder, and of course, in the basically 5th century setting, you you've got people who are highly mobile. Guntarius is the friend of the Burgundians, and the Burgundians, well, they seem to have been moved into what is now Burgundy from further south, and other groups are being shifted about, and you wonder quite where Walter fits here. Indeed, what is his ethne? What is he? Is he a Visigoth, perhaps? Is he perhaps? Oh, well, I don't know. There are other possibilities, a Burgundian or a Frank or something, but we're not really sure. He seems to be part of the uncertain ethnic and political situation in the 5th century. And that's quite interesting.
One of the special qualities of Walter of Aquitaine, of course, is that he is such a widely attested hero,
Mm-hmm.
unusual in the corpus of medieval Germanic literature. What do you make of that?
Mm. Well, that is a hard one. It's the kind of Polish connection that puzzles me. Have you any idea how that came about?
Probably through the reduction of the Walter material into a kind of ballad form,
Yeah.
um, which is another aspect of the scholarship is that there is a theory that there are these Spanish ballads about a person named Gaiferos. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a longstanding theory that those emerged from the Walter tradition.
Mm-hmm. We can't really place Walter in a sort of historical setting in the same way that we can place Attila or Guntarius.
Well, I'll just lay it out for you in terms of the attestation. So we have, of course, in Latin, we have the Waltharius. In Old English, we have the fragments of the Waldera epic. In Old Norse, we have the kind of summary of the Walter story in Thithrex saga. Now, Thithrex saga, of course, is actually based on medieval German sources. And in the medieval German sources, we have a lot of references to Walter as well. Obviously, in the Nibelungenlied, there are allusions to his story, but there's also actual fragments of a Middle High German Walter poem, which there's two fragments of. And then there are many references to him in the poems about Dietrich von Bern or
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Theodor. And also, interestingly enough, there's a character in the Song of Roland who has a name that in some manuscripts is given as something like uh, Guatier del Hum, or Walter of the Huns,
Mm.
which seems to be our man as well.
Yes, yes. Mm. Well, all this does is in a way a reflection, an imperfect reflection, of course, of a confused historical situation with Theodoric or Thizrak and his various contacts, and indeed, the references to Widia and Wayland in the Waldera fragments. So you feel there is a kind of alternative history of Western Europe lurking in these fragments, but it's very difficult to put them together. Well, this is the latest production of Uppsala Books. It's the Latin poem of Waltharius, an epic about Walter of Aquitaine, and it's translated by Brian Murdoch and edited by Leonard Nydorf. A very striking poem in itself. It's a book I've always wanted to have and never had the chance to buy. So I'm really pleased that I've got it at last, and I can strongly recommend it to anyone who's interested in Beowulf or in the history of the post-Roman period or the whole development of the Hunnish and Gothic period. So if you want to know anything about those kinds of things, this will tell you something. And it's a good read as well. So strongly recommended.